The family has had lots of different interests in all sorts of different fields. I think the famous ones are probably wine, and of course the ownership of the two great Bordeaux vineyards, Chateau Mouton Rothschild and Chateau Lafite Rothschild, which are still in family ownership.
For nearly 2 centuries, the Rothschild family has been known for controlling more wealth than most nations. But beyond their financial empire lies a far more personal and unsettling legacy, one hidden within their own DNA. What happens when a family locks its fortune behind not just business acumen, but centuries of intermarriage and genetic secrecy?
The Rothschilds would only begin to appear as one of the great banking and financial families of Europe towards the end of the 18th century. Their lineage, though, can be traced back considerably further, to at least the 16th century.
Over 70% of their marriages between 1824 and 1877 were between close blood relatives, a practice with profound consequences. Behind sealed archives and erased records, a shadowy story emerges, one of engineered inheritance, silent suffering, and the fragile cost of preserving power at all costs. What is the true price of controlling both money and genes? The marriage strategy. At the heart of the Rothschild family's story lies a calculated approach to marriage, one rooted not in tradition or romance, but in strategy and control. Between 1824 and 1877, an astonishing 71% of the family's marriages were between blood relatives, primarily first cousins. This was no cultural coincidence. It was an intentional policy designed to preserve wealth, power, and influence entirely within the family bloodline. Each marriage was a piece in a larger plan, a deliberate effort to create a closed-loop inheritance model that would protect their dynasty from external threats. This strategy transformed the family tree into a looping circuit rather than an expanding branch, with repeated names and intertwined lineages. The Rothschilds weren't just marrying cousins. They were engineering genetic continuity as carefully as they managed their banking empire. The patriarch Meyer Amschel Rothschild made these intentions explicit in his 1812 will, establishing rules that dictated business and family behavior for generations to come. Wealth to pass through the male line, marriages only within the family, secrecy above all else, and exile for those who defied these laws. The rationale was simple, yet striking. Keep the fortune and the blood pure, insulated from outside influence and division. Sons were not permitted to marry outsiders, and daughters could not inherit, locking the family's assets and loyalty inside a tightly controlled circle. This approach gave their wealth an unmatched durability and cohesion, turning rivals and competitors into mere spectators. The family network, spanning from London to Frankfurt, Vienna to Naples, operated as one unified system, never fragmented by outside alliances. To outsiders, this degree of inbreeding might seem doomed to bring genetic disaster. Yet the Rothschild dynasty avoided publicly evident deformities or scandal for decades. Instead, they cloaked the consequences beneath layers of privacy, silence, and carefully sealed archives. While maintaining an appearance of perfect health and success, the family quietly managed a biological legacy that was anything but simple. The tension between their financial mastery and genetic reality set the stage for a much deeper, darker story. Doctors and historians noted the patterns early on: hereditary melancholy, fragile constitutions, and nervous disorders circulated in private correspondence and medical records. Yet these hints were often described in careful, coded language designed to maintain discretion. This wasn't pathology to fear, it was viewed as the price of protection. One family member famously remarked, "Love is unreliable, blood is not." These words encapsulate the cold calculus that governed their genetic and financial strategies. It is striking to compare the Rothschilds to other aristocratic families known for consanguineous marriages, like the Habsburgs. Even the Habsburgs, notorious for their frequent cousin marriages and genetic deformities, never reached the level of union within the immediate family that the Rothschilds engineered. Their rise was not by accident, but by design, with the explicit goal of preserving not only money, but a biological blueprint meant to safeguard their power. However, the success of this strategy was not without cost. While their wealth and influence grew untouchable, their family tree became a tightly wound genetic coil where hidden vulnerabilities quietly accumulated. Behind the surface of thriving empires and united banking houses, a fragile balance was being maintained, one that would eventually demand more than secrecy could provide. The most profound consequences of this strategy remained locked away, waiting to emerge from the shadows. Despite the layers of power and privacy, the story of the Rothschild marriage strategy is ultimately a story about control. Control of assets, control of alliances, and control of a genetic inheritance. It challenges the belief that great wealth offers immunity from biology and inheritance. The family transformed something deeply human into a matter of precision and calculation, melding financial empire building with engineered bloodlines. As this tightly controlled legacy developed, the Rothschilds amassed not just fortune, but a biological system that reflected their business mastery. Yet the story hidden behind the marriage certificates was far more complex, hinting at a secret that only the family archives and private ledgers might fully reveal. The archives of secrecy. Beneath the stately facades of the Rothschild estates in Vienna, London, Frankfurt, and Paris lies a network of archives few have ever seen. These archives are not just repositories of banking contracts and estate papers. They hold medical records and genetic ledgers sealed for generations. Access is strictly forbidden to outsiders, and even researchers face closed doors and limited permissions. The family's control over these archives has been a crucial part of maintaining the secrecy surrounding their genetic legacy. Medical ledgers, meticulously maintained across 3 continents, documented more than births and marriages. They tracked health conditions, doctors' reports, and coded diagnoses related to the family's bloodline. These records were treated with the same rigor as their financial accounts, signifying the importance placed on managing their genetic information as a precious asset. The family's dedication to privacy turned these documents into a fortress of silence, designed to keep public scrutiny at bay. The terminology within these records often employed coded language to obscure true meanings. Phrases like privacy paramount or family discretion recurred throughout clinic ledgers. Historians who studied these documents found references to auditory disturbances, visions, and nervous disorders without naming affected individuals. This pattern illustrated a deliberate effort to erase particular family members from public memory, protecting both reputation and bloodline. This silence extended beyond mere paperwork. When a family member fell ill, the response was rarely medical intervention in the public eye. Instead, encrypted terms were used for temporary retreat, prolonged rest, or administrative travel abroad, all euphemisms for removing someone from view. These disappearances left no obituaries, no official records, and no public acknowledgement, creating a pattern of vanishing that left more questions than answers. Connected clinics servicing Europe's elite, all sharing similar confidentiality policies, further enabled the family's discreet management of genetic issues. Their financial resources guaranteed access to the most privileged and secretive medical care available, shielding them from the scandals that plagued other noble families with similar genetic practices. By editing their story from public history, the Rothschilds crafted a narrative of perfection rather than vulnerability. What survives today are fragmented clues hidden in the margins of these archives and private letters, revealing patterns of illness and mental health conditions that were never discussed openly. The family's ability to contain the genetic consequences of endogamy speaks to a broader system of secrecy, one that controlled narrative as tightly as wealth. The deep silence surrounding these medical files suggests there was always more to the story than financial success. Notably, this control was not about curing hereditary issues, but containing their footprint. Unlike most families whose medical histories become public with passing generations, the Rothschilds created layers of protection so effective that many illnesses were simply erased from official history. This system insulated them, but also played a role in perpetuating hidden suffering that few outside the family could comprehend. This tension between visibility and invisibility, between immense power and private fragility, is part of the dynasty's defining paradox. The archives represent both the heights of control and the unknowable depths of what lies beneath. With each sealed door, the question intensifies: what truth may lie buried within, and how might it reshape our understanding of this financial powerhouse? Such profound secrecy creates a historical mystery that challenges researchers and historians alike. Without access to these medical and genealogical records, the true extent of the family's genetic legacy remains locked away, handled only by family discretion. It is within these guarded documents that the intersection of biology and wealth most starkly emerges. Signs of genetic strain. Though public displays of the Rothschild family radiated health and vigor, private correspondence and medical notes reveal a very different picture. Historical records describe recurrent episodes of nervous disorders, hereditary melancholy, and frail constitutions appearing across generations. Physicians assigned to the family carefully recorded these symptoms, but veiled their language in diplomacy, reflecting an acute awareness of the stakes involved. Medical historians reviewing these accounts found a consistent pattern. Family members frequently exhibited signs of mental and physical fragility. Some letters documented unsteady temperaments or episodes of withdrawal, suggestive of mood disorders or psychological conditions. These clinical snapshots hinted at a deeper biological cost to the family's concentrated marriage strategy. The case of Liberty Rothschild, born Elizabeth Charlotte Rothschild, highlights the reality behind these coded entries. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, Liberty's illness was largely kept private, but was well known within the family. Her story punctuates the quiet presence of mental illness in the family and raises critical questions about the consequences of generations of consanguineous unions. Her sister, Miriam Rothschild, would later confront this legacy openly, founding the Schizophrenia Research Fund in 1962, a personal response that broke the long-standing family silence. Miriam's pioneering work in psychiatric genetics was informed by a recognition that mental illness was not an isolated occurrence, but a hereditary reality within their lineage. This acknowledgement revealed a complex coexistence of brilliance and vulnerability. The pattern of illness extended beyond Liberty, with family correspondence and some archival notes indicating psychological challenges among other members. While no dramatic physical deformities ever became public, the subtle signs of inherited mental health conditions persisted, creating what some researchers call the Rothschild paradox. They avoided the visible markers of extreme inbreeding, but bore the less obvious neurological and psychiatric burdens. Historians have linked these patterns to the known genetic consequences of sustained close-kin marriages seen in other dynasties, though the Rothschilds seem to escape the overt physical traits typical of such unions. This difference may hint at a biological process called purging, where the most lethal genes are weeded out over generations, but less severe vulnerabilities, especially those affecting cognitive and emotional function, remain hidden within the gene pool. Importantly, modern genetics acknowledges that many psychiatric illnesses are complex traits influenced by multiple genes and environmental factors. In the Rothschild case, it's believed that the same genetic combinations associated with mental health vulnerability may also correlate with intellectual ability and creativity. This dual inheritance underscores the intricate balance between the family's extraordinary achievements and their hidden struggles. Yet, despite these insights, the full extent of the Rothschild family's genetic legacy remains a mystery. The sealed archives and restricted records leave unanswered questions about how widespread and severe these conditions may have been. What is clear is that beneath the surface of immense wealth and influence, the family carried an inherited burden quietly shaped by their own design. These medical and historical clues challenge the myth that wealth can overcome biology and emphasize the profound human cost behind the Rothschild empire's unbroken exterior. As the story unfolds beyond money and power, it reveals the fragile biology that silently shaped the dynasty's fate for generations. The intertwined nature of hidden genetic realities and meticulous record-keeping leads naturally into the deeply personal stories within the Rothschild family, where private struggles become impossible to ignore. Liberty Rothschild's story. Amid the veiled health struggles that shadowed the Rothschild family, Liberty Rothschild's life stands out as a poignant and revealing chapter. Born Elizabeth Charlotte Rothschild on November 5, 1909, Liberty was the second daughter of Charles Rothschild and Rosakoff von Verheimstein. Raised in a household steeped in scientific achievement and cultural excellence, she possessed remarkable artistic talent and earned a scholarship to the Paris Conservatoire. Unlike many relatives who publicly dazzled with accomplishment, Liberty's life was defined by quiet endurance and private hardship. In adulthood, Liberty was diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition that profoundly shaped both her experience and the family's response. Unlike more public figures in the dynasty, she lived largely out of the limelight, supported by the extensive resources of her family to ensure her safety and comfort. Her illness limited her public engagement, making her struggle largely invisible except to those closest to her. Yet her condition was no secret within the family, illustrating a raw inheritance beneath their polished image. Liberty's story reveals a side of hereditary legacy rarely discussed: the inheritance of vulnerability rather than power. The Rothschild family, famed for amassing extraordinary wealth and influence, faced a biological reality that control could not erase. Despite engineered marriages and guarded archives, Liberty's schizophrenia exposed the truth that genetic fragility persisted beneath the dynasty's veneer of perfection. The world-famous scientific and artistic talents surrounding Liberty and her family only deepened the contrast of her life's challenges. Her older sister, Miriam Rothschild, became a renowned naturalist and geneticist, highlighting how brilliance and vulnerability coexisted in one family. Liberty's quiet struggle illuminated the delicate tension between legacy and human fragility that shaped the Rothschild lineage. This personal reality clashed with the century-old genetic policy mandating cousin marriages and sealed records that prioritized family unity over individual well-being. The family's careful control over marriage and inheritance had not governed the deeper workings of biology. The Rothschilds engineered financial perfection, but could not fully govern the genetic outcomes that came from such sustained consanguinity. In response to Liberty's condition, her sister Miriam took a groundbreaking and deeply personal step. In 1962, Miriam founded the Schizophrenia Research Fund, later renamed the Miriam Rothschild Schizophrenia Research Fund, dedicating it to the understanding and treatment of the condition that affected Liberty. This act transcended philanthropy. It was a bold public acknowledgement of a hereditary challenge the family had long hidden. Miriam Rothschild's commitment to psychiatric genetics research represented a quiet rejection of the family's tradition of silence around inherited mental illness. By funding studies often shunned by mainstream science, she embraced a mission to illuminate how genetics played a role in psychiatric conditions. Her work challenged the stigma surrounding mental illness within aristocratic families and reached far beyond the Rothschild name. Liberty's story and Miriam's response together demonstrate a vital truth. Even the most carefully controlled dynasties cannot fully escape the realities of inherited biology. The family legacy, the meticulously guarded wealth, the closed loops of marriage, and the sealed archives came face to face with the human fragility that inheritance carries. Liberty's life was a testament to the limits of control and the persistence of vulnerability across generations. Though largely absent from public history, Liberty's quiet endurance and Miriam's scientific advocacy revealed a hidden side of the Rothschild family story. Their experiences expose a lineage grappling with inherited illness beneath the surface of extraordinary wealth and power, weaving human complexity into the tapestry of one of history's most powerful dynasties. The acknowledgement of this reality naturally leads to the role Miriam Rothschild played in transforming private pain into a legacy of scientific progress and openness. Miriam Rothschild's legacy. Miriam Rothschild's legacy stands as a landmark in the family's complex relationship with hereditary illness. As a pioneering naturalist and geneticist, Miriam was known for groundbreaking work in parasitology and animal behavior, but her personal journey was deeply intertwined with the family's hidden struggles. In the early 1960s, motivated in no small part by her sister Liberty's diagnosis, she founded the Schizophrenia Research Fund, pushing forward the study of psychiatric genetics at a time when such research was still marginalized. Her decision to create a research fund explicitly dedicated to schizophrenia was remarkable, not only for its scientific ambition, but also for its public visibility. Unlike past generations that prioritized silence and discretion, Miriam used her family name to shine a light on hereditary mental illness. This represented a profound shift, embracing transparency about a condition that had long been a source of stigma and secrecy within elite circles. Miriam's work extended beyond funding. She personally corresponded with leading psychiatrists and geneticists, advocating for rigorous study of genetic factors in mental health. Her research interests consistently circled back to heredity, demonstrating a commitment to understanding biological inheritance far ahead of mainstream science's focus. She believed that addressing hereditary illness openly was the path to alleviating suffering, an idea that challenged aristocratic convention. Colleagues recognized Miriam's drive and vision. One researcher who received funding from her foundation later noted that Miriam was deeply committed to combating the shame surrounding mental illness by promoting knowledge and research. She saw scientific understanding as a way to free families, including her own, from burdens of silence and stigma. Through this, she created a powerful symbol of the Rothschild family's evolving relationship with a secret once too dark to discuss. Her decades-long advocacy forms a legacy that quietly but unmistakably acknowledged the biological consequences of generations of inbreeding and endogamy. Miriam did not seek to publicly expose family secrets through media, but chose to engage in the scientific process, turning resources and influence into tools for progress. This approach brought the Rothschild family's darkest genetic realities into the light of rational inquiry. Yet, Miriam's openness had limits. While she funded research and championed the genetics of psychiatric conditions, She maintained the family's privacy regarding the full extent of their medical records and archives. The precise details about the family's genetic patterns remain behind sealed doors, guarded from public view. Miriam's legacy is thus both a bridge to transparency and a reminder of the mysteries still hidden. Through Miriam Rothschild's vision and determination, the family confronted a genetic truth that centuries of secrecy had obscured. Her legacy reshaped how the broader world sees hereditary mental illness and aristocratic families. It suggests that even the greatest dynasties must reckon with the genetic legacies they inherit and pass on. Miriam's pioneering role prepared the ground for future exploration into the Rothschild family's genetic story, a story where science and silence continue to intertwine, still waiting for full unveiling. From this emerging openness to hidden realities, the story turns to the scientific concepts that may explain the puzzling paradox of the Rothschild genetic legacy: the science of inbreeding. The genetic legacy of the Rothschild family presents a puzzling paradox that has long intrigued historians and scientists alike. Sustained consanguineous marriage, especially between first cousins, typically increases the risk of inherited disorders, both physical and mental. Yet the Rothschilds, despite their extremely closed bloodline, did not exhibit the overt physical deformities or catastrophic health issues commonly seen in similar dynasties. This contradiction has led experts to investigate underlying biological processes that might explain their apparent resilience. One possible explanation is genetic purging, a natural selection process observed in isolated breeding populations. When harmful recessive genes produce severe consequences, individuals inheriting two such copies often fail to survive or reproduce. Over generations, this reduces the frequency of the most damaging mutations, potentially allowing a population to maintain relative health despite inbreeding. The Rothschilds may have benefited from this mechanism, which could explain why they escaped the more visible effects seen in families like the Habsburgs. The Habsburg dynasty famously suffered from high inbreeding coefficients, resulting in well-documented physical deformities and cognitive impairments. Charles II of Spain, one of the last Spanish Habsburgs, exhibited an inbreeding coefficient higher than that of siblings and suffered from numerous disabilities. His prominent jaw deformity remains a symbol of aristocratic inbreeding's genetic cost. Comparatively, the Rothschilds' lack of such visible features stands out, underscoring the scientific mystery surrounding their genetic profile. However, genetic purging is far from complete in eliminating all risks. While the most lethal genes may decline, many genes with subtler or non-lethal effects, especially those influencing neurological development and mental health, can persist. Modern geneticists recognize a range of psychiatric conditions with hereditary components, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. These complex traits often involve multiple genes and environmental factors, which complicate the picture of inherited vulnerability. What makes this especially relevant to the Rothschild family is the observed coexistence of exceptional intellectual achievement and recurring mental health challenges. Studies show that some genetic variations linked to psychiatric conditions also correlate with heightened creativity and cognitive abilities. This dual inheritance pattern suggests that the very same gene combinations that contributed to the family's brilliance may also have increased susceptibility to mood disorders and related illnesses. The case of Liberty Rothschild, diagnosed with schizophrenia, is a clear example of this complex biological interplay. Her condition aligns with the idea that hidden genetic risks have quietly persisted within the family, despite the absence of overt physical symptoms. This pattern complicates the narrative of pure genetic success or failure, highlighting the nuanced consequences of the Rothschilds' marital strategy. Unfortunately, Without access to the family's sealed medical and genetic records, much remains speculative. The data that could definitively map the scope and nature of hereditary conditions in the Rothschild lineage are closely guarded. Modern genetic science confirms the general risks of sustained endogamy, but the precise outcome for this family continues to elude scholars, preserved behind layers of privacy and discretion. While science points toward explanations, a parallel narrative unfolds around how the family managed the legacy beyond genetics, the ways they controlled information, shaped public memory, and preserved their reputation. Control beyond finance. The Rothschild family's mastery extended far beyond financial empires and wealth management. It encompassed a meticulous control over the narrative of their own history and biology. Their influence reached into the archives, records, and stories that shaped how the family was perceived, especially concerning health and hereditary conditions. This control was essential to maintaining a public image of strength and perfection, even as delicate and sometimes troubling truths were buried in secrecy. Medical records and genealogical documents were not simply stored. They were curated with an eye toward what should remain visible and what must be concealed. Many documents related to family health have been marked restricted or removed entirely from public archives. Archivists and historians working with donated Rothschild collections have noted conspicuous gaps in records concerning births, deaths, illnesses, and mental health. Some family members appeared briefly in official accounts, only to vanish without trace later, replaced by silence and omission. This selective preservation of history reveals a deliberate strategy to hide vulnerabilities and protect the family's reputation from scrutiny or scandal. Private clinics and country estates, funded by the family's immense resources, were frequently used to care for relatives with mental illness or fragile health away from the public eye. Discretion was, above all, a currency as valuable as any financial holding. Historians and medical researchers studying aristocratic lineages confirmed that such practices were typical among Europe's elite. However, the Rothschild family's breadth of control and the remarkable consistency and longevity of these practices stand out. Over a century after the marriages that established their genetic pattern, access to personal and medical records remains restricted, fueling speculation about what remains hidden. The family's careful management of information raises difficult questions. What would those sealed documents reveal about the biological cost of a marriage policy that prioritized blood purity? To what extent has this control shaped historical understanding of the dynasty? And why does such secrecy persist when so many historical families' records become public over time? This control extends to public narratives as well. Despite evidence of inherited mental health conditions within the family, the Rothschild name has long been associated with success, influence, and cultural prominence. The silence around genetic vulnerability was sustained through both the legal protection of private records and a cultural emphasis on discretion within wealthy circles. In truth, the family did not merely guard financial assets, but shaped how their most intimate vulnerabilities were framed or erased. Stories of faint rumors, removed family members, and coded medical notes hint at a system built to edit hereditary illness out of public memory. They effectively edited their own history to preserve an image synonymous with power and longevity. This dual mastery over finance and family narratives underscores a profound aspect of elite status, the ability to manage not only wealth, but legacy itself. For the Rothschilds, controlling reputation, genetics, and history formed a triad of power that reinforced their position for generations. It is a reminder that in the corridors of influence, secrecy can be as potent as currency. From managing narratives, the story deepens into the personal and enduring cost of this delicate balance, where wealth and vulnerability coexist in uneasy tension. The unseen cost of power. The Rothschild family's story reveals a paradox deeply embedded within the dynamics of immense wealth and biological inheritance. Their financial empire, built on careful strategy and secrecy, has endured for centuries. But the very genetic legacy that sustained their fortune also carried hidden vulnerabilities that no amount of wealth could fully erase. Beneath the public success lies a delicate and often painful reality of inherited fragility. For generations, the family's methods ensured that wealth and power remained tightly controlled. Yet the medical records, private correspondence, and cryptic documents reveal a quieter narrative, one where mental health challenges, hereditary conditions, and early disappearances hinted at a cost rarely acknowledged. The Rothschilds guarded these truths in sealed archives, managing their image with the same precision they managed their money, but the consequences persisted nonetheless. This struggle between power and vulnerability speaks to a universal tension. No matter how much influence a family wields, biology remains an immutable force. The Rothschild approach, blending extreme endogamy with rigorous secrecy, created a lineage marked by exceptional intellect and achievement, alongside the quiet suffering of mental illness and fragility. Their story is a testament to the complexity of human inheritance. Liberty Rothschild's life, shaped by schizophrenia and lived largely out of public view, embodies this hidden cost. Her sister Miriam's dedication to psychiatric research transformed family tragedy into a mission for scientific progress and awareness. Through this personal lens, the Rothschilds confronted the limits of control, the boundary where even the greatest fortunes meet the unpredictability of genetics. Beyond individual stories, the pattern of selective revelation and deep privacy paints a picture of a family acutely aware of their vulnerabilities but determined to protect their legacy at all costs. This duality of brilliant success and suppressed fragility offers insight into how historic power is maintained not only by wealth, but by managing what is known and what remains hidden. This ongoing secrecy leaves the full scope of their genetic history shrouded. Researchers and historians can only piece together fragments, hindered by archives locked away under family discretion. Without access to definitive records, the full measure of the biological cost remains speculative, adding an air of mystery that continues to intrigue and perplex the public and scholars alike. What the Rothschilds' story ultimately highlights is that wealth cannot grant immunity from the fundamental realities of human biology. Their meticulous management of marriage, inheritance, and history shaped both financial empires and genetic legacies in ways few families have attempted or survived. Yet, the fragile humanity at the core persisted, weaving complexity into their enduring narrative. The Rothschild family's story reveals a hidden truth about the intersection of wealth, genetics, and human fragility. Their legacy is a complex blend of power and vulnerability, secrecy and revelation. If you found this exploration insightful, please like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's untold stories. Thanks for watching.